Hey all friends, welcome to the channel. Bob here. Welcome to another Embers Adrift video. Now I've got a lot to talk about today, so I've kind of got some pre-recorded footage. What you're going to see is some dungeon stuff, some names and whatnot, and a bit of loot that we get from those and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's going to be a kind of a selection of stuff that I did in the game over the last few days. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Steve and Dave, friends of the channel, who I hooked up with over the last few days to play some of the game, get some footage and stuff and whatnot. Yeah, and thanks a lot. It was an awesome time. Had a great time. So there's a lot to talk about. But what I'll do first of all is just to quickly cover a couple of things that I spoke about in the previous videos that I did. First of all, a little bit about Unity and using Unity. I know a couple of you guys mentioned it as well about using Unity and kind of like trying to get your own identity in the way the game looks. I do think that that's something that needs to be worked on. But saying that, as if any of you watched my Shroud of the Avatar videos, you'll know that I enjoyed the scenes in Shroud of the Avatar. I thought they were really immersive and stuff. And this game is kind of the same. You know, I mean, we went to the Meadowlands, which is a really big open zone with a load of interesting stuff to see. And yeah, the more I've played the game, the more I've really enjoyed it, and I find this game probably even more immersive than Shroud of the Avatar. To be honest, I'm finding it really awesome now. I've got into it, and yeah, the Meadowlands is my favourite zone. It's a massive zone. It's open as well. It's got some. It's kind of got some forested areas, but it's a big bowl and it's really open. And there was a point where we were fighting some mobs, and the moon came up, and the lighting in this game is amazing, and the lighting from the moon across the landscape was really awesome. And it was one of those moments which I probably didn't get on video. I'll check to see if it will be included in this video or not. If I did, hopefully you'll see it. Yeah, but the look at it is I've really grown to enjoy it. I think the issue was, as I said before, it just looks like a Unity game. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And yeah, some of the immersive experiences I've had over the last, I was going to say weekend, but the second thing I was going to mention to you is that they kind of gave the impression that maybe it was only a one-off, and I hope not, because I do feel that one of the sticking points is when you're paying £50 for a game, or $50, $60, whatever it may be, and it's only available for 2 days a week, that to me, that makes it less attractive for someone to want to buy the game. I understand it's in beta and they need to work on the server, but I think of a game like Project Gorgon, for example, which I guess you could argue is much further down the line, maybe, although it hasn't been in development for longer, really. You know, that game has a cost attached to it, but it's open 7 days a week, but it's still in beta. So I understand they're probably at different stages, but I think paying £50 or whatever it is and having it open 2 days a week is it's just going to be a bit of a point for people. And I do hope that the game is open. I do hope they keep the extra 2 days, so Friday to Tuesday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or whatever it may be. I do hope they keep that as a permanent thing, because I think that's a good idea, and I think it would just encourage more people to come and give it a go. So yeah, so that's the thing that they tried this weekend, and I hope it's permanent. There was a suggestion it might not be, but I'll keep my fingers crossed. Yeah, and as you can see when you look at the video here, looking at some of the dungeon footage, it's really immersive. What I love about the dungeon as well is that it feels really organic the way it's designed. It's quite vertical, not just horizontal. One of the criticisms I have in some of the dungeons, well, many of the dungeons in like Project Gorgon, for example, is the fact that they're just on one plane. There's very little verticality in a lot of them, and they're just like corridors, you know. But this has really been well designed. This dungeon, there's lots of twists and turns and ups and downs and whatnot, and the lighting is beautiful as well, as you'll see. Yeah, so it was a really from a visuals point of view, yeah, I've kind of got over the fact this Unity, and one of the things that Unity seems to do really well is the lighting, and yeah, I found it a very immersive experience, and I think you'll find a dungeon that I've been in, and also the meadows particularly, a really immersive experience. and that's it from those 2 points. I guess moving on, the big thing is the combat. And up until this weekend, I've been playing it solo, but over the weekend and the Monday and Tuesday, I've mostly been grouping up. And it is this, as has been said by the developers, etc., and whatnot. This is a game where if things come together when you're in a group. That's not to say that things like the Chevron system I don't like. I'm never going to like it. I'm talking about actual in-game combat when you're fighting. And it's obviously very deliberate. When you look at what each character can do, or class, or whatever you want to call them, each class brings something to the table, but it's different from EverQuest. Whereas there are some classes in EverQuest that brought kind of like everything to the table, like a bard or an enchanter or a shaman or whatever it may be. In this game, it's been very deliberately designed so that as a tank, for example, you need a DPS, I would say, at least. Like healing and stuff, the healing and whatnot in this game and the recovery time is not as bad as EverQuest. You get food and a drink that you can drink to increase your stamina regen and your health regen. You also get items that have got stamina and health regen on them, so little fungi type items, that you can wear. Apparently there's a breastplate that's got some health regen on it, and it's called it's the game's equivalent of a fungi tunic and whatnot. So every class has got the bits that they need to contribute to a group, but there don't seem to be any classes that have everything. I'm playing a warlord, and I do find with a warlord that I can still manage very well solo, and I think most classes can probably solo. It's just a matter of time, really. But if you're used to playing EverQuest and you're used to playing a melee or a tank class in EverQuest, you'll find the recovery time in this game much quicker. Get yourself some regen items, have a cup of tea, eat some food, and you'll find that when you sit down, I think they've got the balance perfectly with regards to downtime, as would call it in EverQuest or whatever. I think that it's speeded up from EverQuest, but there's enough of it so that you do need to sit down and take a little break. But it's not that horrible EverQuest where you're sitting, if you haven't got a healer and you've got no healing, you're sitting down forever and your hit points are ticking up one every 6 seconds or whatever it is. It's not that kind of downtime. So yeah, because of that, because the way that you can increase the regeneration of your health, I feel that most classes will be able to solo what they could solo and get by. But it is really where when you go into a group that all these things work together. And it is very much like, more so than EverQuest even, or any other MMO you've played. I do feel that this game is definitely designed, the class is definitely designed to require other classes. And I know that some people would say that EverQuest is like that, but this game is even more so. Particularly if you want to go in and do dungeons and stuff, and it's fun and it works brilliantly. Like my time grouping up with Dave and Steve was just amazing. We had a great time. We went through the dungeon. We did some other stuff as well, as you'll see. I've got some short clips of us fighting names and stuff in the group. It plays really like EverQuest as well. You go and pull a mob. You really need to try and get one if you can. We were a bit over leveled for this dungeon, but I hadn't been here before and I wanted to get some footage, so I thought we would have a look. But it plays. That's my favourite thing of the game is the fact that it plays. It really feels like EverQuest. Out of all, I know I've said it before, but now being in a group, now I've been done some grouping, it feels even more so. It's really got that, what would you say? It's really got that difficulty and pacing right. So the pacing of the fight, the difficulty of the fight, and also the pacing of your downtime. I think all of that stuff is perfect, actually. I think that I do have some issues with the game, but I think the thing they've nailed on the head is the pacing and the difficulty. But I will get to the Chevron thing later on, and I'll keep talking about it, but I do have an issue with it. But although I do understand why it's there, but I'll talk about that after. But yeah, so if you're an EverQuest head, and the thing that you like about EverQuest is crawling through a dungeon having to be careful. I mean, we died in this dungeon a couple of times, even though we were kind of over leveled for it, really. So it's got that thing as well, where you're never safe. You know, if you get some mobs on you, if you stretch yourself too far, you're going to die, essentially. What you might see in this clip here is what you might see in one of the clips is that there's a strange thing with archery where you're fighting an archer mob and it doesn't drop its bow and take out melee, which I found really odd, and I mentioned it when we were grouping, and apparently it's supposed to. Apparently it's purposeful, because apparently the way it's supposed to work is the archer, as you can see, is supposed to move back when you get too close, and I think the mechanic that they're going for is that the archer will move back, and maybe some of it will move back to the camp if you keep following it, and maybe some friends will aggro. But that, to me, that's never going to work, because the range on even the longbow is quite short, I'm finding, in the game. So what that means is that the mobs are never that far away from you, and you can manipulate them. So you can just pull them round a corner, and then manipulate the AI so that it never gets a chance to actually wander back to its camp to call some friends. So yeah, that I thought to myself, this is weird. Why am I standing almost in front of a crossbowman or a bowman, and they're still firing their bow? And apparently that's why, but really it doesn't work. So I don't know if it's worth dropping that, or if it's worth. See, I don't think you can ever get something like that to work, because it's just too easy to manipulate. You know, you pull an archer, you just pull it right back. You know, and then what? I mean, I suppose if you increased the range of archery, so that the mob would maybe stay near its group and it could fire at you from a longer range. But to be fair, you'd have to do that for the players as well. I'm not sure how that would working with the way that they've got things balanced at the moment. But that just didn't work, because it's too easy to manipulate the AI of an archer. Yeah, and it was just one of those things that didn't work. But generally, overall, as I said, if you're an EverQuest junkie and you like EverQuest for the combat, for the pace of the combat and stuff, in fact, playing it felt a bit like watching some of the Pantheon videos that I've seen when there's combat going on. No smeg Sherlock. That's because they're all going for a similar pace of combat. So yeah, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I did want to emphasise that if you like the pacing of the EverQuest combat, this is really, really, really good. Even solo, you know, and I know some people are like, oh, it's an MMO, you know, but you know, people want to solo in MMOs if there's nothing going on, you know, and this game does allow that, and it's a bit less painful than EverQuest because the downtime is a bit less painful, and you can make it even less painful with food and drink and tea and stuff. So yeah, I think it's really the combat for me has been the star of the show, and when you're in a group, in this group here, like I'm the healer, we've got a tank, we've got DPS. It works really, really well. Just going back to the visuals, one thing I wanted to say was that although the textures, I've got everything turned up to high, and the actual armor textures are quite low res. Like I was looking at my armor close up, and there's not much. Is it tessellation and stuff? I can't remember what the name of the but yeah, it's the actual texture detail is quite flat. Not particularly detailed. It looks okay from this distance. When you get close up, you notice it's really, really flat. But what I would say is that I love the armor looks, because they look realistic. You know, it's natural. It's not. I know some people like that, but it's not World of Warcraft, like big shoulder pads and demon helmets. Everything seems quite natural. I think in the patch they showed some new armors coming up, but the armors look really cool, but they're natural. So you've got like a bear's head or a stag's head or whatever. So it's armor that's been made out of the natural world around you. But the combat has got that pacing and difficulty down to an absolute T. And if that's your thing, and if that's what you've been looking for in an MMO, and you keep going back to EverQuest, but you want something new, then yeah, I think this has got that down to It's got that down to a T. The other thing as well is that there's a lot more going on in the combat than you realise. So the weapons that you use have different to hit and damage values depending on where you're standing. So there was one point where I got into combat and I got surrounded by 3 mobs, and it was weird because what I noticed was that 2 of them literally moved to the side. So it's almost like the mobs have got this force field around them, and if you get more than one on you, the others get pushed around to the side. And that's quite interesting because, as I said, you've got different weapons that have got different values depending on where you're standing. So if you're standing to the side of someone, if you're standing at the side or behind, then you might get a to hit a bonus when you're fighting them. And I like the way the mobs kind of surround you, so that if their weapons have got that to hit bonus, they might be getting it. Some weapons have a bonus to hit when you're standing in front of them. So the staff that I've got has got a to hit bonus for when you're standing in front of them. So that was quite, so that's quite interesting. I like the way the mobs, even if they were forced around you because of force fields around each other and they push each other around, I still like the way that they did surround you. That was quite tactical. You've got things like, the other thing I quite like is that you've got these. Let's deal with the magic thing first. Apparently, when the game was in its previous incarnation, there was magic, but they've removed it. I still can't decide if they've removed it because they just thought it was a good decision and they want to have a very low magic world, or if it's more of like a balance and development time and that kind of thing. I'm not really sure, but this is and is going to be a very low magic game, it looks like. But what I think is quite clever is what they've done is that animal mobs are really important to kill. So in other MMOs, you kill animals, and in some of them you might skin them for skins or whatever, and that's fine. You've got that basic thing going on. But in this game, the animals kind of cover what you would call like magical effect type things. So it's really interesting because and again, it's all part of this kind of like natural world type thing that they're going for. So for example, the Berserker class uses animal what are they called? Is it pheromones? Animal pheromones, I think, that they kind of splash themselves with, and it gives them a bonus. And every class has got that. So you're killing an animal, and you're getting something from the animal that you're using to increase your character's abilities, whether it's when you're damaging. So I get this stuff from animals that increases my healing when I use it. Other classes get, as I said, they get things like, so one of our class was HUD here, you can see in the video, was a warden. He's got some poison attacks, and we were fighting spiders, and the spiders drop poison that he can use to increase he's got a poison dot attack as a warden, so he can use the poison from spiders to increase that attack. And that was a really nice touch as well. And it really does make you think about when to use and when not to use them, because they're quite limited. And I think everyone's kind of said, and I found it as well, you keep getting drops for all the other classes, but I'm very rarely getting drops for my class, and everyone seems to say that. So I don't know if I guess it's just RNG, but that does seem to be a bit of a joke among the community. But yeah, there's this stuff that drops from animals that increases my healing ability, but you can decide to use them or not. So I kind of think, and because they're limited, you have to kind of think about when you're going to use them, which I think is quite a good strategy. So I would use them in a group, if it was or in a group if it was a particularly tough fight or that kind of thing. But you can switch them on and off, so that was a really nice touch as well. And I think it feeds into the fact that what they're going for is like I think there's a skill they're going to have in a game called chemistry, which is kind of going to be a bit like the magic side. It's going to be a bit like the magic, basically. And I don't know much about it, but apparently it's going to be difficult to learn. It's going to be a real adventure, a real process to learn it and master it. So that's going to, so I'm kind of quite interested in looking at that as well. And that kind of fits in with the animal poisons and I can't remember what they're called. It doesn't matter. But all this stuff that you naturally get from an animal, for example, it all ties in with that low magic thing, and I think that was a really really cool thing. The other thing as well is that a lot of the stuff that the animals do, like debuffs and stuff, are based on, like, they'll spray you with musk and that kind of stuff, and that debuffs you or whatever. So it looks as though things in the natural world are replacing magic, and I know that a lot of people actually will have a problem with that, because I know a lot of people in games, and I'm myself included, who play caster classes. That's what we like playing. You know, I don't particularly like. I don't particularly like melee. Well, I've never really particularly liked melee tank classes. Although recently, since I played New World and a couple of other games, I've kind of got a bit more into them. A bit more like I've got into crafting, really. And I know that the non-magic thing will be a big issue for some people, but it just looks like it's going to be a thing, you know, and that's how it's going to work. Talking about, like, combat and character progression again, one thing again that I really really like is the fact that your character progress is slow enough, so that when you get new abilities or when you get an item, it really really makes a difference. It's a bit like going back to the grouping thing. The grouping thing is a bit like D&D. Like, if you think about D&D from a point of view of, if you're a solo character, it would be a bit, actually I'm talking about tabletop role playing, not a game where it's designed where you can solo or whatever. But yeah, it would be very difficult for a player on their own to solo in a tabletop D&D campaign, unless the dungeon master made some massive exceptions for you. And so I think that the combat is designed around that a bit. It looks like to me anyway, you know, where there's more of a reliance on your teammates, but also the character progression as well. Getting an item with just a bit of extra regen, or some extra stats, or a bit of extra defense or something on it, has a massive impact in the game. Stats and equipment and your skills really matter. So that as I was leveling, I was getting more skills. Each skill I got really made me feel stronger. It wasn't just a slightly better heal, although you do get those. They do upgrade in that way. Like, when I got a new skill, it generally felt like it had a big impact on my performance in a group. So that was really interesting as well. So the way that your character develops is really good as well. And one thing I have to say is that before I said there weren't many skills, but there are going to be extra skills introduced into the game. And if you look at the patch notes from last week, I haven't seen this week's ones, but if you look at the patch notes from last week and some things that I've heard the devs say and stuff, apparently there's quite a lot of content that's ready to go. So like zones, and they're introducing new mobs and that type of thing. Yeah, but it's just I think it's a technological thing around their server. I think they're waiting to upgrade. I think they're just in the process of upgrading servers and stuff. So when that's done, I think we're going to see implemented a lot more content. Yeah, but that covers the combat for me. There's so much more going on under the hood, that makes it more interesting. But mostly it's the way the classes are designed, and also that D&D feeling of progression. So when you got a magical item in D&D, even if it was +1, it made a huge difference. You know, you felt stronger when you went into a fight. You felt stronger just for that +1, and this game has kind of got that sort of thing going on as well. Yeah, it's really cool in that sense, you know. And as I said, if you're into that kind of pacing of combat, I think you're going to enjoy it. Moving on to some stuff that I think that I've seen, and I think that it really needs some work. The mob, I guess it's sticking in with. I guess it fits in with this a more natural low magic world, but the mob the mob variation seems quite limited, and it's not the fact that it's limited. It's just quite dull. Fighting animals and giving fighting animals another purpose, I think, is great. But mostly all I've seen are animals and humanoids, and I think there's got to be a compromise here, because and like Dave and Steve mentioned it to me as well, that they're just fighting the mobs quite dull. It's not the fact that they don't have abilities to use and stuff like that. It's just the fact that sometimes like the modelling of stuff can have an impact, you know. And this game doesn't have skeletons or zombies or trolls or ogres or vampires or whatever it may be, or dragons. You know, it doesn't have any of that stuff. And I do think it has an impact. They don't even really have any what you would call like big mobs. You know, all the stuff that we've been fighting is just the same size as us. As I said, there are no giant mobs or large mobs. Maybe, apparently there were, I think Dave was telling me, apparently there were in the previous incarnation. I think he mentioned trolls or something. But I don't know if when they removed the magic, they removed all that kind of stuff as well. So, you know, that is an issue, because I've only been playing the game. Well, I've probably put about 50 hours in so far, maybe a bit more than that, maybe 60 hours. And I'm already fairly bored with the models. I hope maybe they can do something to jazz up the humanoids and the animals and stuff a bit more. But I don't really see... I mean, the weird thing is that most of the animals are... most of the mobs that said are animals are humanoids, but you do come across the odd one or stuff that breaks out of that mould. You know, like you've got these like giant... they look like giant vampire bats, which doesn't seem quite natural, really. And at night you get these different mobs spawn. They're like wisp type mobs, which I guess there are like fireflies and stuff. So that's probably not really a good example. But there are. I've seen these giant vampire bat type mobs, which I know giant vampire bats are an animal, but these are my size walking around and stuff. So I don't know. I do feel that just from a variety point of view, maybe they need to move away from that. And we need to see some more. I don't think there's anything wrong with having low magic, but having fantastical mobs in it. You know, you could come up with some natural phenomena that causes this kind of stuff. Maybe the Ember. I think there's going to be more going on with the Ember stuff. So maybe the Ember stuff will feed into that, and we'll see some more what you would call supernatural mobs maybe at some point. But yeah, so that was a bit of an issue. I'll talk a little bit about what I found out about the chevron thing from previous. A couple of people who I think were trying to defend the game too much were saying that, well, it's just like any other MMO with elites and bosses and stuff. It's not that. Yeah, it's not that at all. I'm not buying that. That's not, you know, any MMO that I could log into now, bearing in mind that the 1, 2 and 3 chevrons are wandering all over the zones. And they seem to be a mixture. There seems to be a pretty even mixture between them. So if you take that in consideration, then 66 point whatever % of the mobs are 2 and 3 chevron. Now I can log into any game now and go to any zone, and unless it's a dungeon, maybe in World of Warcraft's case, or like deep in a dungeon in EverQuest, then you don't have those elites and whatever games and whatever mobs just wandering around the zone in that amount of, not anywhere near that. You know, as I said previously, those kind of mobs are very rare, few and far between. I'm just looking at my list of games that I've got at the moment, and I could go into Final Fantasy, Lost Ark, Mortal Online 2, EverQuest, Project Gorgon, Worm Online, Lord of the Rings Online. These are games I've got installed at the moment. New World, Elder Scrolls Online, City of Heroes, World of Warcraft. All of those MMOs would not have that amount of elites and bosses wandering around. That's a ridiculous claim to make. But what it is, and I understand it, and like Eloise said it to me, who's like the community manager. She answered some of my questions, and what she said was that you get what I think is it's just a way of segregating the mobs into groups, telling you what you can fight. Essentially, I think is what it's for. And she said that you get a bonus for fighting the correct chevron of mob. So if you're in a full group and you fight a free chevron, you get a bonus XP for doing that. I guess as a solo player, if I fight one chevron, do I get some bonus XP? I guess so. I guess that's how it's working. If you're a small group and you fight 2 chevron, maybe you get a bonus. And it's funny because when you're in a group, you get a little symbol come up on your character. on your character HUD that basically tells you that you're in a group. So maybe that's what that's for. So I think it's purely based on segregating the mobs into groups and telling you what you can fight. Even taking into consideration the fact that you get bonus XP for fighting the correct mobs with the correct amount of people. And it's probably maybe for them it's an easier way of balancing solo, small group and group content. Maybe it works really well from a development point of view. But further down the line, I do still see an issue. You see, the thing is that this game is going to be a niche game like any of the other games that I play. And I logged in off. So if you're an off-peak player like me, I logged in off-peak. I know people can say, "What's your fault playing off-peak?" Well, it's not my fault. That's just my way my life is, you know. But I understand the game's in beta, and people are very wary about paying for beta. And I understand that when the game is released, there'll be more people playing. But even so, off-peak, there's still going to be a limited amount of people available to play. And I logged in at the weekend off peak and there was hardly anyone on. Literally, at one point I could count them on one hand. And so if you're a new player coming into the game 6 months down the line, if you're playing off peak, even if you're playing on peak, you know, you might just find the fact that there aren't that many other new players to group with. So people will be leveling alts and stuff like that. But I feel that at some point, you know, us as players and new players are going to be in situations like I feel that I'm going to be in the situation quite a lot because I play off peak, where there just isn't a group available. And then what do you do? Well, there are one chevron mobs that you can kill, and that's fine. And I like, apparently the older version of the game didn't even have that. So I appreciate they've put it in, so they're giving solo players something to do, and no one needs to say it's a group game, because I understand that. But you have to have, even if you're designing a game that's a group-only game, you have to have some contingency in place for the fact that it's a niche game, and there's going to be times where people are not going to be able to find a group. So the one chevron mobs, I guess, are that contingency. But the problem with that is that you end up, like, when I wasn't running around on my own much at the weekend, but when I was, I kept passing these camps, and I couldn't fight there, so I just had to move on. And I do feel that some players won't have as much patience as me, and they'll run around Meadowlands, for example, at the level that they're supposed to, and they'll keep coming across these 2 and 3 chevron rat camps and rabbit camps and exile camps, whatever it may be, and they'll just think, "Oh, I'm just going to give up. I just can't be arsed," you know. And I can understand that, because that's people's. I think the thing is that people's time is valuable, and I think that, again, I was talking about this in game over the weekend. The sort of people looking forward to these kind of more hardcore MMO games are people our age. You know, you're probably at least in your 30s, maybe, and upwards. But when you're in your 30s and upwards, your time becomes, as you get older, your time becomes more precious to you. And I think that I don't want this to be such a niche game where it's only played by like a hardcore, because it's the combat is so good and the pacing is so good. I don't want this to be a game that's only played by like some hardcore elite that have already got their own group that are dedicated to playing the game all the time. I don't want any game to be like that. But and although they have allowed solo players to make progress, as you level, obviously the progress slows down like it does in EverQuest, in any MMO. And as I've been travelling around, I'm not saying that there aren't one chevron mobs, but there seem to be, in Meadowlands, there seem to be a lot more 2 and 3s. And a lot of the interesting camps were 2 and 3s as well. So, yeah, as I said, I don't want this game to be a game that's only played by the hardcore elite, the sort of people who still can get a group together to play D&D, you know, a number of times a week. I don't want that to happen. But I feel that it might become that way, because I think people coming in who have got less time to dedicate to the game, you know, will just say, I just can't be doing with this. I don't want to spend half an hour running around to find a camp, you know, or whatever, because travelling the game is quite slow as well. So the zones are huge, much bigger than I thought they were, which is a plus point. But I do feel that but that makes travelling really slow. So if you're going around looking for a camp, it can take some time. Yeah, I just don't feel... Maybe that's what they're going for. And maybe some people who are going to be over defensive of the game will say, well, the game's not for you. But that's not the answer. You know, if you tell enough people that the game's not for them, the game fails. That's basically how it works. Unless you've got a cash shop and you've got whales who are prepared to keep funding you, if you've got a few whales who are prepared to keep funding you to keep going. Even with a subscription service, you need a certain amount of players to be paying the subscription every month, you know, because subscriptions don't work out to a lot. I know a lot of people don't seem to like subscription-based models now, but I think us older players have less of... Certainly myself, Dave and Steve, we're all older players, you know, we're all over 50 and we don't have a problem with subscriptions at all. I'm not sure if you can say that that's the norm, but you know, that's how we felt about it. But if you think to yourself, even if you got 500 subscribers at $10 a pop, that's $5,000 a month. Is that enough to keep the game going? Is $1,000 subscribers enough? 2,000? Do you need 5,000? I don't know. I don't know what the developers' goals are with regard to that, or what they need to do to not just keep the game ticking over like some other games, but actually keep a good active development going. But so that's my only concern. You know, my only concern is that long term is that the game becomes a game just for a certain very niche type of player, and I don't know. Maybe the game can survive doing that. Maybe that's exactly what it wants to be, and it doesn't want to be anything else. I'm not sure, but I really can't buy this. I've never ever bought this. It's the game's not for you argument. I feel that there's always a balance, and maybe as we go along in development, we'll find a balance. But for me at the moment, I did find it a problem running around when there wasn't anyone to group with, and I did find it frustrating coming across camps that I'd much rather come across a camp that was read to me from like talking in coloured EverQuest Embers Adrift difficulty terms, but it was one chevron, but I knew I could come back to it later and level from it, if you know what I mean. So rather than going to a camp and it was a 2 and 3 chevron, rather it was just a higher level, and then later I could go back. But I guess they're kind of committed to it now, and a lot of their balance is around 1, 2, and 3, depending on if you're solo, small group, or full group, I guess, you know. But yeah. But overall, I had a whale of a time, and fighting in a group, everything, as people told me, does come together. Now the big question at the end of the video is, can I recommend it to you, to my community? Well, there's two problems here, obviously, right? One is the cost. They want $50 to come in, or £50 or $60, whatever it may be. So one is the cost, and the second one for me is there's three things. It's the cost. The second one is the fact that the servers are only up 2 days a week. That might be 4, maybe it's permanent. I'm not sure, but I think it's up in the air at the moment. So one is the fact that it's cost. There's a cost involved in only playing 2 days a week, and the third one is the fact that I haven't seen much of the content yet, because there isn't much of the content in the game. So I think you've got like 4 zones and some dungeons, and I think the zones kind of go up to, I think the highest level zone is 20 to 30 maybe. So there's half of the game missing at the moment, which I haven't seen. Yeah. So those are the 3 things that I'm finding it difficult to recommend. Like when another free, like if you're like me and you've got some spare cash and you enjoy trying new MMOs, and you're happy with the combat pacing, then I would say go for it. Because not only the one thing I haven't spoken about, and this video is becoming quite long, and I didn't want it to be this long, but there you go. The other thing I haven't spoken about is crafting. So if you're into crafting, this game's kind of got you covered as well. It's got the gathering and the crafting skills. I like the crafting. It's detailed, but it's not detailed enough to put me off. As someone who was never a big crafter, I enjoy the crafting. There's lots of different levels to it. You know, you get different different grade. You get different tiers of metals and gems and stuff, and the way that you mix these up gives you various bonuses on your equipment. And what I quite liked about it, it did seem quite open, a mix and a mix and match. So you can mix up certain materials to get an item that's got the bonuses that you want on it. I like that. So yeah, so just a quick word on the gathering and crafting. This game has got you covered on that. It's got that in it, and to me, I enjoyed it, and it looks deep enough so that if you're a crafter, I think you'll enjoy it. Yeah, but just getting back to the summing up part, it's difficult. Like if they do another free weekend, like I'll promote the crap out of this game because I feel that it's got huge potential just in the combat alone. You know, even if we don't see any skeletons and trolls and vampires and ghosts and werewolves, whatever it may be, I still feel that the combat is the real hero here. The way I feel it's the thing that's carrying the game. And secondary, I would say that it's the world's very immersive as well, but that's a secondary. I think it's the combat and the balancing and the pace and the mechanics and of the combat and stuff that are really carrying it. So yeah, when the next free weekend comes up, next free testing weekend, I would absolutely recommend that everyone tries it if you like the EverQuest pace of combat, because this has got you covered. If you like crafting and a free weekend comes up, I would recommend coming in, because you can effectively see what I've noticed with the crafting is that you can just go around and mine and gather stuff and then craft. You don't need to kill anything, in the sense that no, that's not quite true. So for certain crafting, like for like if you want leather, for example, you do have to kill animals. That's fine. But like I made myself some armor, but I didn't have to kill anything to do that. So I went around, I mined the copper that I needed. And then I had a second character who could gather plants and stuff to create cotton and thread. So I did that, and I was able to create my own armor, and I could have done that without killing any mobs. There are a couple of vocations where you do need to kill mobs, but yeah, but this is a game where you can actually do some crafting without having to kill anything. It will probably become a bit harder as you level up, obviously, and you need higher level tier stuff, because mobs do roam around, and mobs will be roaming around the gathering areas and stuff at some point. It's inevitable. So yeah, I mean, but I found that the leveling and the craft and the gathering anyway all fits together quite seamlessly. You do them both as you're running around the world, essentially. But yeah, sorry, I keep sidetracking myself because I keep thinking of things. Another mechanic as well that I'll quickly touch upon is the light thing. So at night it's really dark, although at the moment it does seem as though you can just faff around with a gamma to change that. But you get these ground torches that you can put down in the ground when you're in a dungeon, if it's dark or if you're outside and stuff, and it kind of lights up your little area around you, which is quite interesting. Problem is that the torches last 5 minutes. What torch lasts 5 minutes? So, you know, the day-night cycle in the game is long enough to mean that putting a ground torch down is pointless. I can't, you know, it's if a night cycle is an hour, you're going to go through 12 torches, and is it 12? I've got my maths right. I think so. Yeah, they last 5 minutes. I don't get that. That's weird. I mean, you can actually craft the torches, so maybe you're just meant to craft hundreds of them, but that's weird. You know, I would tweak that so it gets to a point where you only use 3 or 4 torches for a nighttime period. Why would you need any more than that? It seems a bit odd. But yeah, but there is a mechanic in there where the game's dark, and you got this thing where you can put torches in the ground to light up your little area. It's quite nice when yesterday I put a torch in the ground when we was in a dungeon, and we was hiding in this little room from spiders, and I put the torch down, and yeah, it really added some atmosphere. The light came up, and we were all like, "Oh, light!" You know, it was really cool. Sorry, I know I keep sidetracking myself, but I keep thinking of things that I want to talk about. Yeah, but that is it. You know, when the next free weekend comes up, I would absolutely jump at this game and try it. Particularly if you're playing at peak times and you can get in a group and do some stuff. That would be really, really cool. I'm not sure if I've got enough footage for the length of this video. I'll have to see the length of this talk over. But for me personally, the £50 that I paid or whatever it was has been worth it. You know, because the combat and the combat, everything around the combat. I won't keep saying mechanics and balance and pacing, that kind of stuff. Everything around the combat for me has been enough to make the £50 worth it. And the and when you throw in the immersion in the world that I'm feeling, and the fact that I've enjoyed the gathering and crafting and stuff as well, yeah, it's been a ride, you know. And if you're the sort of person that has got spare income, you know, and you like trying different MMOs, I'd recommend this. But I'm saying that, but I'm being wary of saying that because I don't want someone who doesn't have spare cash to try and I hate it. I would hate someone to spend money on a game because I said so. Yeah, and they didn't like it. That's why I would say that when the next free weekend comes up, I will plug the smeg out of it. I would say definitely this weekend, free weekend, download it and try it. You know, I think you'll enjoy it. Yeah, that's it for now. It's Wednesday today. I was hoping to do something really special, and I was hoping to do more Embers Adrift videos over the last few days, but unfortunately my health's been really poor, and we've had one or two kind of like family issues as well that have been going on. So yeah, I wasn't able to do as much content as I wanted to do, and there was something I was going to do that I was really looking forward to that I couldn't do, but hopefully I can do next week, because today is Wednesday and things have picked up a bit and I'm feeling a bit better. Yeah. But I've got to wait till Saturday to play again. It's annoying. I want to log in and run around and increase my prospecting, you know, up to level 10, so I can start mining some tin and some high level gems and stuff. Yeah, I'm sitting there thinking of all the things that I want to do that I can't do because I can't bloody play. I really hope they keep the 4-day thing a week going. I'm not sure if it's difficult for them because it means that they can't work on the server. I'm not sure, but surely you must have a couple of servers maybe, or maybe that's what the upgrade is being planned. I'm not sure. But anyway, this has been a mammoth video, and I'll probably have to go and lay down now. But anyway, thanks for listening and watching. Embers Adrift, I've loved it. If you got a bit of spare cash and you like trying out new MMOs, I recommend it. If not, wait till the free weekend first, if there's going to be another one soon, hopefully. And yeah, then I'd definitely recommend giving it a go then. Anyway, thanks for listening and watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.